Welcome back to another video, guys. Today I'm going to be showing you a few basic things on Hondata, like the basics of tuning and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is open a map. So you go through File and hit Open. Well, in this case, if you don't have Tune, you just hit New, and it's going to give you a bunch of different tunes you can choose from. So we'll start with my buddy's car right now. So it's a B20V. So what I'm gonna start out with, they do have a B20 down here, but because it's B20V, I'm gonna start out with the P72 tune, which is the VTEC B18. So I'm gonna start with that. Just hit OK. It's gonna pull up a map behind us. So this is the fuel table right here. This is the main thing you're going to be messing with while tuning. So if we go through, the first thing I like to do is go through all the parameters, which is pretty much just the settings for the car. It's not boosted, so we're going to skip the boost control, the boost cut. Closed loop, he hasn't wired up the AFR yet, but I will make a video on how to do that. Closed loop, yeah, we're just gonna ignore all these. Flex fuel, we don't have a flex fuel sensor. Fuel consumption, we're gonna get to that at the very end of the tune. Fuel injectors, so because he's using stock stuff, it makes it easy. Hondata already puts the stock 240cc injectors with the injector voltage compensation, which is pretty much just the dead times. Fuel trim, we're also gonna get to that at the end if it's having trouble starting. Stuff like that. Idle, this is if you're using an IAC. Sometimes, a lot of the times I can't get the IAC to work on Hondata. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I don't know if I'm using busted IACs or what, but I've never been able to get the IACs to work. Usually I just tune them without. Ignition compensation, this is another thing that you do towards the end of your tuning. It just pretty much you can add or subtract timing depending on the temperature of everything. Launch control, this one's pretty cool. I like to always put on launch control when I'm tuning something. It gives somebody something to do other than just the tune. I feel like that's the big part of why people get stuff tuned if they're not turboed. So before I do anything with this, we gotta see how the car is gonna leave, what RPM we want it to leave at. But pretty much this maximum speed, so if the car is going over 6 miles an hour, then the two-step will turn off. The way Hondata does it is it's always on unless it's above 6 miles an hour. Or you can change it to where you can put it as the air conditioning switch, the power steering pressure switch, service connector switch, brake switch, or VTEC pressure. All that pretty much is you'll go and find the wire on the actual ECU and the correct pin, and then you use that. A lot of the times I think they're either you give ground to them or give power to them, and it'll turn the switch on and it'll let the computer know. So that's how you can get like a two-step switch or a launch control switch. This is also what you'll do for anti-lag, this fuel enrichment and ignition timing stuff. The map sensor, this one's, I don't know, pretty self-explanatory. I think we're using a stock map sensor, so we don't have to do anything. But if we were using a replacement map sensor, like if we were boosted and you want more than 8 pounds, because the stock map sensor can only go up to 8 pounds, they have a bunch of pre-done map sensors that you can choose from. Most of the ones that you buy, like a 4-bar map sensor, I've never gone over 4-bar with Hondata. But yeah, you can just use this a lot of the times. And if it doesn't have the map sensor that you get, what you can do is go down here and it'll pretty much just let you change the settings to what your map sensor is. Miscellaneous, if you're ever missing stuff in your tune and you're really confused where stuff is at, usually this is where a lot of sensors are. So we aren't running a knock sensor on it, so we're going to disable that. But you have a lot of choices here. You can disable the air intake temp sensor, but we're going to leave that on, as well as the coolant temp sensor. Also gonna leave that on. Alternator control, like a couple of these are like, why would you turn them off? Sometimes while you're tuning, sensors go out, or before you're tuning, a sensor's out, and the person you're tuning the car for, or if you're tuning your own car, you don't want to have to wait to get a new sensor. Sometimes you can disable it for a little bit, and then that'll let you get your tune done. Yeah, you can get rid of a few things. So this disable injector here, I don't know why that's off. We're gonna put that on just so if the injectors do have problems, it'll let us know. Purge valve on like the newer Civics, not even newer. The 2000, like an EK Civic has purge valves. You can use this to invert the purge valve so it doesn't really do anything. Use your nitrous stuff. I haven't really messed with this on Hondata. I've only done boosted applications. Notes, you can write stuff down and store it onto the ECU. This is pretty cool. You can data log. If you have your AFR set up, then it makes tuning a lot easier. Protection. This, I searched a long time when I first started tuning for this whole radiator fan, the override radiator fan control, because I like to have it come on sooner than 199. I don't know what kind of thermostats you guys are running, but a lot of the times I'll run a thermostat closer to 180, maybe 190, but usually I want to have it come on at around 190. Oh yeah, and it lets you change the speed that it'll turn off. Rev limits, this is pretty self-explanatory for our application, the B20V. We put ARP rod bolts in it, so I'm pretty confident that it'll make it up to 8200 RPM without a problem. This also down here, you can switch it around how you like. So the activation RPM, you could have it come on a little earlier, because at the end of the day, it's not gonna stop at a perfect 8200 RPM. So what you could do is you could have it come on early or late. So usually I leave that in the minimum or in the middle. With this power reduction too, a lot of the times with Hondas, you'll leave them on the limiter to stop spinning. So I'm not gonna get rid of all the power, but definitely some. You can also change the way it limits the RPM. So stock, it's just fuel. I haven't really messed with this too much. I've done fuel and ignition a few times, and it kind of makes the tach go all over the place. So I don't really do that. But yeah, there's a speed limiter, also known as the governor. Yeah, secondary tables. We're not running a secondary table, so we're not going to worry about that. Security, I don't really do anything with that. Shift light, this is pretty cool. It'll flash your check engine light when you need to shift. I'm also gonna put that at 8,000. Okay, traction control. I haven't messed with traction control on Hondata yet. TPS, this, if you're having a lot of problems with the idling and everything, this is what you should do before you start tuning. So you'll put it onto the on position, turn the key to the on position, plug it in, make sure you're data logging with this bolt, like the lightning bolt right here. Then step on the gas to let go. The minimum reading, you'll hit read on this, and it'll come up with whatever the percentage is or the voltage pretty much. And then you'll press all the way down on the gas, and then you'll hit read. And then it'll give you your maximum reading. This will like just calibrate it more closer to your car. So then it'll have an easier time idling, simple stuff like that. Yeah, this is also depending on how much throttle you give it. It'll either retard or advance in our case. So the base retard part of the positive value is retard. So it'll take out this many degrees if you stomp on the gas. As well as this. The gear adjustments. Yeah, you get the point. Anyway, VTEC. So a lot of the time when we're doing cars that haven't had VTEC, like cars that don't come factory with VTEC, we'll just put one wire to the VTEC solenoid itself and skip out on the pressure sensor or pressure switch, because it's not super necessary at all. So usually we'll get rid of this VTEC oil pressure switch. So it's just a one wire, super simple, straight to the VTEC solenoid. Yeah, if you match these numbers, it's gonna try its hardest to turn VTEC on in this specific RPM. I'm gonna leave it at stock because that's just what we're gonna try out for now, and we're gonna see how that works. This minimum throttle, so VTEC won't come on until it's above 50% down on the throttle, as well as the speed. Sometimes I'll put this to 0 if I want to leave on the two-step in VTEC. Mainly with anti-lag, sometimes it helps with that. Minimum temperature, yeah, you get the point. But yeah, so that's it for the parameters. Now pretty much the bread and butter of tuning is changing this fuel map right here. So also the ignition map, of course. So because we're running VTEC, we have the low speed fuel table and the high speed fuel table. So low speed just means out of VTEC, high speed means in VTEC. So I'm gonna leave it like this because I haven't ran the car and I haven't seen what it needs yet. It should start up just fine on the B18 tune. A lot of people will swap cars with B20s and just use P75, which is just a stock LS ECU. It does work, but of course it's not going to be perfect, but it will start up. So we're going to leave that normal how it is now, as well as this low speed ignition table. The high speed will also leave until like we actually start tuning. But basically what you can do is you can highlight certain parts of the table, and then if you right click, you can hit adjust, and it'll give you can put a percentage that you want to go up or down. A lot of the times there's some hotkeys, so if you hit Control I, that's increase. If you hit Control D, that's decrease, and that'll just go little by little. That's usually what I do to tune when I get close. Also, a big thing to keep in mind is when you're first tuning, you want to always adjust stuff in a bigger area, because if you start adjusting stuff in the single squares when you first start tuning, everything's going to be all out of whack, and it's going to be way hard to recover the map, and it's not going to be linear. So what you want to do is, like, if you're adjusting the idle, so usually it'll highlight when you're data logging, it'll highlight where it's running at in the 4 squares. Usually I like to go before the first thing I always do is do the whole map until the idle's decent. That'll give me like a baseline of how the motor wants to run, how much fuel it needs. And then what I'll do is I'll go through individually, we'll drive the car, we'll see where it needs fuel, and I'll add fuel according to that. So I like to start out with that, start out always big. And then once you get it closer, you can go a little smaller, and then when it's really close, you can usually do like the 4 squares that it's highlighting to get the perfect ratio you need. Also, I forgot to explain that when you're tuning the fuel tables, the AFR, usually there's lambda and then there's air to fuel ratio. So I always tune with air to fuel ratio because that's just what I learned how to do it on. So air to fuel ratio of 14:1 is what you want at like idle and low load. A 13.8 is what you want on like medium load towards high load. So that's 13.8 is pretty good for like an NA car when you're ripping on it. And then when you're boosted, you want anywhere between an 11.8 to a 12.5. The leaner it is, which the higher the number, the leaner it is, the lower the number, the richer it is. So richer, more fuel, leaner, less fuel. The leaner it is when boosted, the hotter it's going to run, the more risk you have of melting spark plugs, melting pistons, stuff like that. So you got to be really careful with that. I would say don't. And in the 11.8 to 12.5 really depends on boost. So like if you're running a low number of boosts, I'd say like 6 to 8 pounds, the 12.5 could really get you more power than the 11.8 or lower. Because the leaner it is, I know I hear a lot of people saying like leaner is meaner. That's kind of a term used, but yeah, the leaner it is, the more power it's probably gonna make. But at the same time, if it's too lean, it's not gonna make any power. It's just gonna break stuff. But the 12.5 is a pretty good ratio for like lower boosts, and then on higher boost applications, you just want to keep leaning it out. 11.8 really is the, or you want to keep richening it. My bad, not leaning it. But the higher the boost, the more fuel you're gonna need, of course. Usually I'll leave it at 11.8 unless I'm running like a stupid amount of boost, like over 26 pounds. Maybe I'll drop it down to closer to 11.6 or 11.2. But yeah, usually for normal builds that aren't too crazy, it's like of course a stock build's probably gonna be around 8 pounds, 6 pounds, maybe up to 12 pounds, depending on the turbo. So I'll usually run that around 12.1. Yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all I can explain before we start tuning. Oh yeah, if you need to, it's easier to see different stuff. Like you can put different sensors down here. The easiest way I found is if you just hit copy. Or shoot, I definitely hit the wrong button. But yeah, you'll hit copy, and then you can hit paste. And then it'll let you do whatever. So you'll hit this, you'll right click, you'll go to sensor, and then it'll let you choose from all the sensors, and then they look the same. There's another way to do it, but it's hard to get how these ones look without copy and pasting it. So yeah, you got the speed, you can put anything here, whatever you want. Also, under the sensors, it has tons of, like, all the sensors in the entire car. You scroll down and see everything pretty much. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this type of content, and don't forget to subscribe.
You ain't got my money on my word, I'm killing you.
The number 911 has been changed to a non-public